trop plein. Bravo. Est-ce qu'on démarre officiellement maintenant? Est-ce qu'il est 14 heures? Il est 14 heures. Il n'est pas encore... Au 14 heures pile, poil. Super. Bonjour à tous. Welcome back pour ceux qui étaient là avec nous ce matin. Bienvenue à la séquence Go for Recycling du Refashionday. Je suis Maud Hardy, directrice économie circulaire de Refashion. Et toute l'équipe ici présente, dans la salle, dans les loges, en backstage, on est ravis de vous retrouver cet après-midi pour faire le point ensemble sur les projets clés d'accélération du recyclage des textiles et des chaussures usagées. La dernière fois que nous avons organisé un événement, un grand rassemblement tous ensemble, c'était en janvier 2020. Je ne sais pas si vous vous souvenez, certains d'entre vous étaient peut-être là, c'était dans le monde d'avant. Nous vous avions présenté le benchmark des solutions automatisées de tri pour les textiles. Presque 2 ans après, la crise sanitaire mondiale que nous traversons a impacté tous les acteurs de la filière et toutes les phases du cycle de vie du produit. La fabrication, la consommation et surtout la valorisation. Et sur cette troisième phase, la valorisation, nous avons identifié avec Cécile 3 enjeux majeurs à relever. Premièrement,
So first of all, the hinge period that we are living today is in fact in favor of the emergence of new business models. Secondly, the recycling of textiles and footwear that cannot be reused is the priority on which we need to focus our efforts and actions. And finally, we cannot take up this challenge only on a Franco-French basis. We need to find solutions on a European basis. With Cécile, who is responsible for recycling and innovation at Refashion, we're going to present how Refashion is going to deal with these strategic challenges. She's going to give you the program, and then I'll come back to the logistics. Everything you will see today will be just available on replay on the eWin platform. You have the possibility of asking questions in the room. You will have microphones. Raise your hand and you will get a microphone. Those who are on the live streaming can ask their questions directly on the chat. For those of you who are on a remote basis, don't hesitate to contribute to our word cloud, the word cloud, without any problems. Those of you here, you can give us your word, your reword, and we will add it to the cloud. Now I give the floor to Cécile, who is going to moderate this afternoon with all of our guests. So we would like you to listen, take advantage of what you're going to hear, and hope to see you again next time. Thank you, Maud, for the 5 key projects that we wanted to present this afternoon. Well, you're going to be able to see them soon. We're going to have a recapitulation of the agenda. We're going to talk about the Refashion Recycle platform. We're going to talk about textile fabrics and the work that is being done within the framework of the key project number 3, which is going to study the flows from the clothing recovery centers and sorting centers. We're also going to talk about the 2 work groups on innovation and recycling that we started up 18 months ago. And finally, we're going to conclude with the European Innovation Challenge, which has been running for about a month. So we're going to start with the Recycle platform, and I'd like to welcome Véronique Allaire on the stage. Good afternoon. Good afternoon, everyone. I'd like to present the Refashion Recycle platform, which is being launched today, and something that we've been working on for over a year. Why this platform? Well, because there's a real urgency to deal with these issues linked to recycling, not just in France, but in Europe as well, given the evolution in the regulations concerning the question of unsold recycled textiles for which we need to find solutions. This morning, we spoke of the figures that you can see here. You need to know that of the 33% which are recycled, only 5% are recycled in France and less than 10% recycled in Europe. Everything else is going to the Middle East, Asia, and elsewhere. So this recycling needs to be increased. The share needs to be increased. For that, you need industrial solutions. And today there are many demonstrators. Many things have been done in the last 10 years, thanks to Refashion, the Innovation Challenge, and the call for projects. But all of these concepts need to be industrialized. And this is the objective of the platform. You probably know this cartography that was developed 3 years ago, which has considerably helped us to communicate on the existing recycling solutions. On the periphery, you see the finished and semi-finished products from recycling. At the center, you see the textile materials with arrows. In the middle, you have the recycling solutions, all of the different transformation stages. Generally speaking, starts with garnetting, and then and behind that, you have different solutions possible, either solutions in the textile industry, but in other industries as well. You have mechanical recycling, chemical recycling, because in the possibilities of use, you have some in the plastic sector. Now, this cartography also exists for the footwear section. Here, the cartography is lighter. We have fewer recycling solutions, and these solutions have remained really at the level of projects, whereas in textile, you have a developing office. So we have indeed continued to work at the level of the recycling for the shoe sector. What about the recycle platform? What is the objective of this platform? First of all, facilitate exchanges with the partners, industries, there where you have the capacity for absorption of these materials in other industries. You know that in France, the textile industry has decreased considerably, but you have other industries in France, like the automotive sector, the plastic sector, which would have greater possibilities of developing solutions. Then we need to develop the recycling solutions, and we need to develop the industrialization of these recycling solutions. So we have a platform in French and English, and today we have a platform in France, and we have solutions on the French territory, but these solutions need to be on a European scale because we will be stronger if we are more numerous. And today we are open in Europe. When we talk about the users of this platform, what are the targets here? Well, the targets, in fact, are the material suppliers. These, in fact, are the sorting operators. There are some 33 of them. Some are in the fashion sector. 15 of them are outside of France. And you know that the platform is in French for the moment. Now, if we look at the transformation, material transformation, these are all those located at the center of the cartography, going through all of the phases, you know, from garneting to spinning, pelletization, you know, all of the different steps for the obtention of semi-finished and finished products. Then you have the industries who are customers for these materials. This is what we were lacking today. We had a difficulty showing these customer industries what was available. You have the people who have incoming and outgoing materials. You have other industries like the steel industry, automotive, transportation sectors who are not familiar with the the materials that are available, these transformers who are looking for recycled materials, and they're not aware of the fact that the textile sector can offer recycled materials which have uses in sectors outside of the fashion sector, the textile sector. You have the prescribers, for the platform, competitiveness polls, teachers, etc., company engineers who work out technical specs, etc., and who do not know about the platform. What are the different steps in the project? Well, there are many platforms which exist. You know, the word platform is very, very fashionable. You hear platforms everywhere. So we thought that if we have a platform, we could find one that would be good for us. We have the eco design platform that we developed and spoke of this morning. We felt that we would find a platform, one that would work for us, and we wanted to focus on bringing people together. We don't want to just give contacts. That's good, of course, to enable people to see independently what exists, to discover potential solutions, but that's not enough. What you need to have is to animate the platform, coordinate it. And so we said right from the outset that in addition to the platform, we needed to have someone totally dedicated to the platform who would be able to help different players work together. And you know, when you work together, sometimes it's difficult because you don't speak the same language. You know, between a textile expert and a plastics engineer, you know, you don't speak the same language. And, you know, so it's clear that when, for example, when you talk of fibers, we don't necessarily speak of the same thing. So this is why it was important that the platform be an accompaniment to bringing actors together. So we have 20 candidates who, in fact, were possible. We pre-selected 3 platforms, and we tried to have them looked at by the different potential users. Inex sourcing was, in fact, chosen. His manager is here. You might have met him. So we had to, in fact, adapt the platform Inex sourcing to the incredible sources of materials that we had. And here we wanted to work in cooperation with 30 so-called experts, but if you like, really players of the ecosystem who helped us define the filters we were going to use and tried to explain how we would speak of these criteria. That is to say, you know, how would we work towards this polymorph? In fact, how are we going to work to try to find the polymerizations, different types, how we could adapt this to the different players involved, you know, etc. So the platform came online in July, and the registration is individual in the name of an entity or an organization. In France, we use a so-called SIRET number, which is what associations or companies have. This is or you could use an European community VAT number. If you don't have such a number, we have other solutions so as to be able to register as an organization. What is specific here is that all of the data is secure. This was a very important point for us. We use the Refashion extranet, which is already used by the sorting operators to concentrate and manage all of the data that is entered on the Refashion platform. When you register, you can see this, in fact, and I'll show you later. Registration is free, but it is selective. It is selective because we wanted to have key contacts on this platform. When you contact the company, you have access to the decision-making person on the subject of recycled materials, etc., or the company's management. We did not want to simply produce another address book here, you know, directory with lots of names. The counterpart here is that with the decision makers being the contact, we did not want to allow just anyone to be able to access the platform. So the registration is free but selective, and this on the basis of your motivation, but also what you can contribute to the platform. So here you have the platform. We're not directly on the platform here because we want to be secure. So this is the access site, which is open to all of the platforms public. This is Recycle, Refashion. .fr. So you enter the platform, you see how it works. You register, Refashion validates your profile, and then you have access to the services. Generally, you'll have an answer within 24 hours or less. The commitment is 24 hours. How to use the platform with videos. You have the presentation of recycling solutions. You also have on the site the possibility of downloading the cartography I showed you. And now we will go directly on the platform to find solutions, recycling solutions, or materials derived from recycling. So here we have access to the platform. If you're not registered, you click on not registered. Here you come to this form. This form is directly on the Refashion Recycle extranet. So here you see we immediately ask you the country. For the foreign countries, it is the inter-European VAT number. Then you receive your login and your password. Usually your login is your name and then password. Then you reach this page. So here I clicked on guide, and guide will guide your first footsteps on the platform. Now, one of two things, either you are yourself an actor of the platform, you have solutions to propose. So there you will start by going to your company file. With their agreement, I have here the file of un fibre, okay? This is the first entry that appears on all of the presentations. So you can complete your company file, you can add your materials, change them if you want, etc. If you're simply a visitor to the platform or a customer, prescriber, then you can come directly to this page, and from that point you start your research. You start your search. You can search using the filtering criteria that are on the lower left-hand side. So now you can either select the material, the solution, or your type of search. Here we selected polyester, and in the characteristics, you can select different characteristics that the material is post-consumer or pre-consumer. That is to say, it can be the waste of cuttings, etc. You can choose different sectors, footwear, household linens, professional clothing, etc. And you can choose the format. If you speak of polyester, you can immediately say, I want polyester thread. And so that will immediately enable you to go through certain filters. And here you will immediately see, in fact, polyester produced by companies, post-consumer polyester. In here, in the column with the blue lines, the volumes that can be mobilized, and you have a cartography that appears as well, where by zooming in or zooming out, which works very simply like all cartographies, you can select someone who is perhaps closest to you geographically, and in just a few clicks, you are going to detect the company. When you click on the name of that company that interests you, here you see Un Fibre. You immediately have the contacts for you. We have blurred out by choice, the emails and addresses, but this will send an email to the contact person in the same way that you can have a telephone number as well if you want to call immediately. You have a description of the company. The description of the company is always linked to recycling. Then you can have more information on the company, the solutions it proposes, the markets that their products are destined for, and the materials proposed. So you can click on the little box with your arrow to have more information information on a material that is of interest to you. I spoke of the cartography. Here you see the distribution of the actors over the territory, and in this way refine your search. If you're in Lyon, you can put, for example, I want all the players within 200 kilometers radius. Thank you very much for your attention. And now I suggest that we will have by duplex Mauro Scalia, who heads Euratex. Mauro, you have the floor.
Yes, bonjour à tous et à tous.
Good afternoon, everyone.
I trust you hear me fine. Yes, fantastic. Thank you very much for this opportunity. I represent Euratex, European Textile and Apparel Industry Confederation. We are the voice of the whole value chain, and we are based in Brussels. We're together with our national members, like in France, OIT and OIFIM. We work with the European Union institution to shape policy and legislation, of course, impacting on textiles. For our value chain has been, of course, difficult times. We have good signs that now we are recovering the pre-pandemic level of 2019, while the clothing sector still remains a bit low. But this recovery is hampered by higher shipping costs and price increase in raw materials, and most recently on energy. Shortage of labor, material and equipment is also an issue that we deal with. What I think it's important to reflect upon in the context of the discussion that we're just having today. Today, the European Union agenda puts sustainability at the top. And the EU is maybe the only region of the world which want to transform resource-intensive sectors like textiles into a different way. As Véronique mentioned, we're going to have changes in terms of legislation. We expect that in 3 years, more than 5 million tons of textile waste will have to be collected, reused, and recycled all over the European Union territories. We saw in the platform, in the screenshot shown before by Véronique, the figures in a few thousands. That's the same situation everywhere. In Germany, in Italy, in Spain, there are plans to organize and deal hundreds of tons, of thousands of tons. But here we have a challenge which is way beyond what national and business initiatives can be tackling with. Again, up to 5 million tons of textile waste. So what we do see is that there is no large-scale plan to handle with textile waste. And that's why Euratex 1 year ago launched the Rehabs initiative. Concretely, with the Rehabs, we want to create an integrated system across the European Union, across Europe, to organize and scale up solutions for textile waste. We envisage digitally connected plants across the EU and specialized on to regenerate textile materials and products. The sites will have to be connected among themselves, will have to be connected to policy. Think about also EPR schemes and funds to make these funds, these plans economically profitable and sustainable. And we'll have to be equipped with new technologies that today we see emerging, but still at lab scales. We have to have new recycling solutions. So what we want to do with the Rehabs initiative is to jointly transform textile waste into a valuable raw material, which can be used by the company of the textile value chain to reprocess materials, but can also be used to get rid of leftover from production and tackle costs. Now, I think that's what takes us as Euratex today in this discussion with you. I mean, the recycle platform, which has been just introduced, we believe it's an excellent starting point to work on digital integration and communication to handle textile waste. We really appreciate all the Refashion efforts. We have been, we learn how much efforts and investment has been put, how much research has gone through this exercise before the platform could have been presented and could have been rolled out in July. We've been pleased to present this platform to our members and to the key stakeholders of the Rehabs initiative, which were recently convened. And we know there are different platforms out there. There are many possibilities, but we believe this is an excellent spirit to begin working together on a final tool. Now, in the future, we want to learn more from the business. We need to learn the feedback from also companies present in the room on this kind of outils, as you say in French, platforms itself. And we want to keep doing this in a transparent and open cooperation as the whole Rehabs initiative. That's why we have, for instance, as my last point, the Rehab Stakeholder Forum, which welcome any interested business and stakeholder. And I can actually anticipate today that we will have the first meeting in video on the 29th of October online. So I thank very much again Refashion for inviting me, for this opportunity to share a few thoughts with you. And we really look forward to work together and learn more about the outcome of this initiative. Thank you.
Et nous accueillons avec beaucoup d'intérêt ce partenariat possible. Merci. Thank you. It is 2:26, so perhaps we can have one or two questions from the audience. I have a few questions from the chat while we wait for the room to wake up. First question, can you indicate the access conditions for the platform? Free or pay? No, it's fully free, but it is subject to approval. The platform will only accept those companies which are justified for being on the platform, you know. I showed you that we can present the platform to the public with refashion.fr, where we have the platform presented, but then the platform is for specialized people. In fact, you have to obtain validation for access. We ask you for your motivation for wanting to be part of the platform. A question from the audience? There is a question in the audience. Yes, very well. While we wait for the microphone to arrive, the company, when the company registers, is it for one user or can it be a multi-user? Each user has to justify why he's there as well. Otherwise, the filter would be useless. Each user has to indicate why they are accessing the platform. When we see that a user is not using the platform a lot, we will send them a dunning notice to inquire whether they're still interested in the platform or not, because we want the platform to be dynamic and to be very lively as well. A question, what is the geographic perimeter of the solutions and materials proposed by the platform? Is it French or European? Initially, we focused a great deal on France, but we immediately had, in fact, interest from Europeans. 15 of the 33 sorting operators are outside of France. Some companies in Europe immediately said, yes, we are interested in this, because we had launched a press release in July when we launched the platform. We were contacted by players in Portugal, for example, who recommended that certain players be integrated because they have very important solutions and materials to propose. So it is open to all of Europe. Another question in the audience? Yes, thank you. I have a question. I'd like to know whether the platform allows us to find engineering offices when we have problems finding for us potential users or partners, because, you know, we are not able to find partners to create new prototypes and develop new solutions. Engineering offices, no. If they don't propose solutions, no. On the platform, you have those companies that actually offer materials. This is a platform for detecting, identifying materials. But let's say that those organizations which propose solutions and give examples of what they've done, which also have engineering offices and research, yes, but not just engineering offices. Guido, Est-ce qu'une association, une organisation française puisse devenir membre de la plateforme? Oui, il y en a déjà. Thank you. Thank you very much. If there are no other urgent questions in the audience, then we would like to thank you. Would you like to give us a reword? To be re.
Merci Véronique. Et petit reminder,
and a reminder. Now, we also have an online workshop with Michael Cotte from Refashion, and you'll be able to get a live demo of the site. This is only for online. Okay, so let us go on. And now we welcome Brendan Guérin from Terra. We'll talk about the second project, and that is the library of fabrics, a fabrics library. Good morning, good afternoon, everyone. Yes, good afternoon. I will talk about a study that Terra has done for Refashion recently, and this was organizing a library of fabrics. Before telling you more about this library, let me explain why it's important to have such a library. Today, we talk about recycling, material recycling, and if we want to go further, we have to do material or fabrics sorting. And for that, we need to identify the material, to identify a piece of clothing and the components. So this is a material identification process. So you have a T-shirt with an unknown fabric, and it goes through a recognition device that will produce a spectrum. And this spectrum, as such, doesn't help. But if you can compare this spectrum with other spectrum of fabric samples, then you can get an idea of the composition. So here we have in our library three materials: polyester, cotton, acrylic. And if we compare with the spectrum we have, we see it's close to acrylic. So we can conclude that this T-shirt is made up of acrylic. So beyond the technology, the supply of the technology, the algorithm, the performance, at one point you need, in fact, material references or samples for which you know the exact composition. So our mission was to set up such a library. There were different steps. First of all, we defined what category of materials we wanted to recognize. So pure materials, blends, and we, in fact, looked at those that best represented the market and those that were interesting in terms of recycling. So we established 25 categories. We got the samples from French industrialists, and those we couldn't find here, we bought them on the market. Now, then we tested all these materials or fabrics in our labs with microscopes to make sure that what was written on the label was the actual composition. This, in fact, lasted for 6 months. We started at the beginning of the year, we finished at the end of the summer. So here you have the 25 categories we have selected: 7 pure materials and 18 blends. For each category, we tried to find 20 samples. Why 20 and not 1? Well, if you have 20 samples, you have a variety of origins, colors, manufacturers, because all this can have an impact on the way you're going to identify the material. So here you have the final library and what it looks like. You have all the categories and the number of samples we have per category. So in the final library, you have some examples here. We have 409 samples of textile material that were tested in our laboratories. And we have 10 when we developed this library, we met some difficulties. And one of them that we expected, but not as much. You know, when you are announced a certain composition, then you do the test in the lab. Well, in many cases, you know, it did not correspond to the label. Luckily, we were able to reclassify some of the materials, and out of the 480 samples, we had 71 that were impossible to reclassify. Now, so for each category, you have the level or the proportion of compliant. You see for polyester, 100% of the results in the lab and the label were matched. You have 100% for cotton, then you have the figure for the different products, and you see the further down you go, the more we had mismatch between the label and the result in the lab. Now, what type of non-compliance did we find? So here we have different types. What is important to remember is that the 50% that you have in red, these are errors in the blend. That is to say, we find the same material, but in different proportions between the lab and, let's say, the label. Then, in some cases, we found an additional material. In some cases, we had one of the material component announced that was not there. And when we look into the reasons of the non-compliance, I told you we had two supplies or origins. If we look at the overall 41%, for the industrial samples, the figure is 88%. That means that when we get samples directly from the industry, we have a high level of compliance and a small level of non-compliance. It can be contamination or things like that. But when we look at the samples we buy on the market, there the figure is 48% compliance. So one sample out of two we bought on the market, you get a mismatch between the lab result and what was announced. And the non-compliance we found, you know, in some cases it's pretty serious. Sometimes you find a material that is not even mentioned as one of the components. So we have done this work, and the conclusion is that you cannot trust the labels if you want to do an efficient material sorting. It also shows that if we want to develop systems for material recognition, it's quite difficult on the basis of the label. So we have this library that is available, that are available. We have, in fact, 9 copies, and Refashion has decided to enrich this database or library as time goes on. Thank you very much for your attention. Thank you very much, Brendan. As Brendan said, we have 17 such libraries, but only 9 available. Well, one is already used, in fact. And here we should have Martin Holecki from Matoha.
Hi, Martin.
Hello, Martin.
Hi, good afternoon. Good afternoon. So we're ready to hear how you're gonna.
So we're ready to hear you, how you're going to use the library.
And I'll let you
right.
go on with your presentation.
Go ahead.
Yes, thank you very much for the opportunity to present today. I'm afraid I couldn't make it to Paris on this occasion, but hopefully next year. Perfect. Yeah, so we founded Mata 4 years ago with the vision to create machines which would be super easy to use, they would be low cost, and they would enable immediate identification of materials. So we have developed 2 such machines. You can see our Fabritel machine for fabrics identification on the left, and there is our Plastel plastics identification machine on the right. These are based on near-infrared spectroscopy, which is a very established and standard industrial method for identifying materials. And the data from the near-infrared spectroscopy are then fed into our advanced material identification algorithms. The whole thing is coupled to our secure cloud, which enables you to gather additional insights into your processes, what sort of stuff you are identifying, and also our app for phones and tablets, which lets you save data, access statistics, and configure the machine. Now you should be able to see a demo of the fabrics machine, and you can see that the identification is instantaneous. It doesn't require any sort of sample preparation, and it requires only very minimal training. So all you need to do really is just put the sample there, and the answer just comes up. The machine can identify all the pure fibers, as well as 2 component blends of the most common fibers. So you can see that the answer is shown on the screen. And we also have this little color indicator on the machine, which can be programmed through our app to show a specific color for a specific material. So if you want to sort quickly, you can just make it say show red for something, and then blue for say pure cotton, and then you can quickly just sort by the color indicator. There are obviously lots of different ways you can identify a piece of fabric. If it feels like polyester, it probably is polyester, and you can get some accuracy with this, but we have numerous examples where you just by touch you can't really tell. And when it comes to identifying blends, it gets really difficult to do it accurately, if not impossible to do it by touch. Also, any person sorting these fabrics by touch, they need lots of experience and training. On the other hand, you have lab analysis, which gives you the golden standard in accuracy, but it takes ages to get the results back, and it's only really applicable for single samples. So what we offer is a super quick, cost-effective way to identify materials with only very minimal training. And this is useful for audits, this is useful for quality control, and importantly, it's also useful for actual sorting of fabrics or sorting of for recycling of garments. So we already have customers in Europe, we have customers in the UK and in the US as well, who use our machines, and they have workers who scan items one by one and then can get through few tons per day per worker. So the machine can be actually used for sorting. And unlike automatic machines, you can also sort for reuse. So the worker can quite easily tell if it looks good. So it's always better to do reuse instead of recycling. And it can also handle materials where it's non-uniform, so the inside is different from the outside, which is the case in, say, of jeans or hoodies. Now, to make this in the first place, as Brendan has mentioned, you need a library and you need a database of all these spectra. And the quantity of these spectra needs to be quite large, because there are lots of things which contribute to how the spectrum looks like: weave pattern, use, obviously the composition, color, everything affects the spectrum a bit. So the library needs to be comprehensive and needs to be spot on. So if there are incorrect samples in the library, the machine is obviously going to say incorrect things. And this is just an example. Brendan has shown you all the statistics. So, but this is one of the garments that was scanned in the demo video. The machine says it is 85% polyester, 15 cotton, but the label says 100% cotton. And yeah, we are quite confident there isn't much cotton in that t-shirt. And we have endless example of this. This just keeps coming up. So it can't be really relied on the labels. So also when you look at the infrared spectra themselves, this is, so it's quite easy to tell by just looking at the spectrum without using algorithms, what is 100% cotton and what is 100% polyester. But then when it comes to blends, and especially the blends where it's just a bit of something, it gets really, really difficult and non-trivial. So our algorithms have to be really sophisticated to handle all these cases where you have just a bit of something. And our customers require that, yes, actually 5 or 10% of something and something else can be picked up. So the only real solution to create the library and to develop our machine is to use lab analyzed samples, which we could send just to the lab manually, but what is obviously a lot more cost effective and what was extremely helpful to us was the Refashion fabrics library. And at this point, I would like to thank you for your attention. And if you have any questions, please do get in touch with hello@matova.com or just ask. Thank you.
Thank you, Martin.
Bye-bye. Super.
Est-ce qu'on a...
On accueille direct.
Bon, on va accueillir tout de suite.
Et on fera les questions après.
Oui, pour le projet clé 3.
And for project 3, we welcome Romain Jeanneau. Hello, Romain. This project is to improve the knowledge we have of the flow of textile, linen, and footwear that come out of these sorting centers. So there's a study that was done in 2013. But the idea this year is to update the results of that study and to, in fact, look into the accuracy of the results. So we have the incoming flow and outgoing flow. So we first analyzed the incoming flow. We wanted to update the knowledge we have of the composition of the textile, linen, footwear flow according to the upstream scale that came out in 2013. A second objective was put in place, and this is to appreciate the difference in composition depending on the different collection flows. For example, we have the clothing bank, we have the civic amenity sites, we have the returns from the retail shops or the door-to-door collection. So 140 tons will be analyzed. That's 600,000 items that will be analyzed one by one, coming from 7 sorting centers. Now, outgoing flows. Here, 2 objectives. The first one is to appreciate the difference in composition of the textile, linen, footwear, depending on the origin of the products. And another point is to know the material composition of the flows outside reuse. So 14 tons analyzed, but it represents 20% of those products that are not reused. Now, this is to show you the different steps and principles associated to the process. The first one is collection. So collection. So that's physical separation and traceability per origin of the collection. Now, among the partners, we are going to use the sorting centers to do a pre-sorting. And once this is done, then the product will go to a center of analysis. And those centers are used to analyze these flows. And the last step, now we take, in fact, samples in the flows that do not go to reuse, as we have said. And we will also be able to use the library. Among the other information that will be studied, apart from the origin of the collection, is the presence or no of disruptors, hard spots, and we will also study the color. So we have quite a few questions. We have some on the chat, but also maybe in the audience. So we have the material library, and there is the study that will be done by Romain on characterizing the flows. First question in the chat. Can we also detect materials or fabrics that are organic without any chemical products? A tricky question. If we are dealing with infrared, we will recognize the material, but no, if you compare an organic cotton and a normal one, you will not be able to identify if it's organic or not. You do not recognize the pesticides, for example. And now the level of accuracy when you deal with a blend, polyester, cotton, is the accuracy range is 3%. It's more around 5 to 10% for the blending of two materials. You saw we had 100% cotton and 95% cotton and 5% polyester. Well, if you look at that, using your eyes, you do not see the difference. So it's going to be complicated to go under 3%. So it's probably more around 5%. Another question for Martin. How many different textiles do you need to put in the machine's algorithm per material? Well, that's actually confidential. We use something like 20 different samples per category. So this gives you an idea, an order of magnitude. And a question for you, Romain. Can you tell us about the timeline for the study? How long will it take? It should be finalized end of 2022. So it's 15 months for the study. And why? Well, 600,000 items to analyze one by one. So it takes a lot of time. This is why the study will take 15 months. And you're going to take samples also in the spring, autumn, winter. Yes, of course. The idea is to have a good representation in terms of geography, seasonal collection, and we also look for sorting centers that have different operating methods. Another question concerning color. Does it come up in the infrared spectrum? The color can modify the spectrum. And we've done a lot of tests with the spectrometer. Gray or black pigments will absorb the infrared. So the color can have an influence. This is why in the library, you see here 20 samples. We have white, black, and different colors to get this diversity of colors. This library, how many different materials will we have in the library? Do you have an idea of the maximum number of materials? Any limit? Only the future can give you the answer to that question. So if there are new materials, they will be in the library. Questions in the room? Etienne. Can we have an idea of the Fabritel price? A few £1,000. Well, that's pretty vague. Between 2 and 3, I think. Not expensive for this type of technology, but somewhere between 2 and 3,000 pounds. Another question concerning the future eco tax, the one we have today. There's part that has to do with recycled material. Do you think that tomorrow we'll be able to identify a recycled cotton from a non-recycled cotton? Because this can be interesting from the point of view of this eco tax. And another question, you have a jacket, 2 materials, I'm sure, in your jacket. The Matua device, can it identify the 2 types of products for the separation, the sorting, and material preparation? Well, concerning your first question, it's the same as for organic or non-organic, recycled cotton or non-recycled cotton, it's about the same thing. You cannot make the difference with the spectrometer. It's the same material. And concerning your second question, the infrared is a surface technology. It can only identify the surface. And if you have, one material on one side, you will not be able to detect what sort of material you have inside for the lining. This is, if you have a multi-layered product, you have to scan both sides. And a question in the audience, can we apply this solution on an industrial basis? If I have a conveyor belt used for the sorting, can I use the machine, but I need to scan item per item, or can I, in fact, use it on an industrial basis, a larger machine maybe, on the conveyor belt to scan a certain number of items at the same time? That's more a question for Martin, but the device is for manual sorting today, but I know that he supplies the sensor that you can assemble on another machine. Now, we have presented Matua today, but there are other manufacturers on the market, and some, yes, propose machines for automated processes. The system is the same for the identification, but you have to decide what you want to automate in the process. And the last question. Concerning the library, big European sorting centers are also working on developing their own library. Are there any interactions between your library and the work that is being done by the large European sorting centers? When you're talking about a European library, are you talking about the Fashion for Good library or study? Fashion for Good, well, we are partners in the study, and they are going to use the library that is today with Matua. So complete synergy here. It will be exactly the same.
If there are no other questions in the audience, we'd really like to thank you very much, Martin and Romain. Thank you very much.
Super. Et donc maintenant, on accueille.
So now we have Tony Galloni and Benoit together. Yes, okay. Welcome, please take a seat. So, Tony Gallon and Benoit Jeanneau, I'd like to make a brief introduction here so as to explain when we talk about the innovation and recycling work groups today. This follows an internal study. We wanted to see in what industries there was a potential for integrating a large quantity of non-reusable textiles, because here we're really interested in looking at what can be done between industries, which industries could in fact be capable of absorbing large quantities of recycled textiles. We've mentioned various sectors, the plastics industry, that of composites, and last year we launched 2 priority segments and all of the non-woven for the transportation and auto sector, and the composites for the sports and leisure sectors. So the initial objective of the work groups was to look at the possible solutions on an industrial basis so as to achieve the production and marketing of innovative products using recycled textiles and using the same methodology, bringing together groups with people who have different positions. We wanted to work with a reference pilot per segment. So here you have the 2 pilots, the 2 work groups. We start with Tony for the first work group dealing with non-woven fabrics. Tony Gallon, ICRM, includes circular home materials, and this is since December 2018. After a long career in an auto company, I decided to use my expertise to the benefit of different industrial companies on this subject. With regards to this development, well, we wanted to design, develop, and market a highly performing insulation product. When we talk about performing, we're speaking of a technical product, a product in whose technicity has an important element, which is acoustics, and this for the automotive sector. But we wanted to work beyond the automobile industry, including the railway activity, tramways in cities, etc. So we had to define the process, the industrial scheme, and marketing. The key steps start up in December 2019. Today, we have validated batch 1 and batch 2. Today, we're on batch 3, whereby we are assessing, testing, and coordinating certain points with regards to the industrial scheme. Now, when I talk about the industrial scheme, I'm speaking of this chain of actors that I will detail later. And here we're looking at the operating mode, the technical expectations on the subject, etc. I will go into details here because, you know, the automobile transports and imports a number of thermal and acoustic insulation materials. And today, with the vehicles for new mobility, you have very diverse powertrains, very different from ICEs, from internal combustion engines. And so the frequencies are different. And so the acoustic performance has to be reviewed. In our approach, we've integrated the customer need, and we have totally reversed the state of mind so as to look at the downstream aspect first, and then move back up the chain of actors so as to introduce the various demands. When we talk about the final customer's goal, we're talking of weight, lightning, recycled, and what is recyclable. It's clear that within our industrial scheme, the heart of the whole issue is competitiveness. To be competitive in the market is the key element because the competition is fierce. We had to develop a premium product, enabling us to answer the demands of the car manufacturers so as to be categorized and classed and ranked in the Class A insulating materials. I spoke of the industrial scheme. At the bottom, you see the arrows indicating this is a one-way street. In fact, what I wanted to do was reverse the attitudes by looking at the downstream customer need. But at the same time, we wanted to analyze in detail what we wanted to have. And from this point of view, we looked very closely at materials. You have examples of these here on the table. You have the gross material at the outset that had to be prepared. When I say prepared, it means we had to be able to transform it into threads, thread lengths, able to guarantee the technical need to be resistant so as to satisfy the end customer demand. But at the same time, this meant that we could not introduce certain materials that could not be recycled. Remember, we wanted to lighten, recycle, and be recyclable. So we had to work with the European Center for Textiles, which cooperated on the subject with us. We were able to develop a number of prototypes here. And from that time onwards, we tested them to see how we could position ourselves on the subject. We obviously reworked the garnetting because we had to keep the fiber length. We also had to move up one level to go to the operators to see what was necessary, what was expected, what should be kept, what didn't have to be kept, etc. As far as the characteristics are concerned, and here I'm going to use a term that Maud is going to cringe at, this is what's called the car maker's P-Val. This is the validation plan. And this is something which is highly structured. You have a dozen tests or so that have to be carried out, and you have to show there systematically the conformity with the demand. It's not the technical performance, it's resistance, for example, certain things. So you have acoustic performance, lightness, the recycled content, what is recyclable, heat resistance, because among these materials you have cotton, polyester, wool, you have recycled polyester, you have polyamide, you have binding fibers, etc. So you have a production of 10 samples, 10 batches. We selected 2, we carried out the measurements, and today As you can see on the left-hand side graph, you have the positioning of two of the materials here. These two materials represented here in the form of samples, but which tomorrow can be found within the vehicles. These materials are ranked among the best in the market. Now, what I'm trying to get across today is that we're talking of recycling, of eco-design, but what's essential is that if we want to position ourselves in a lasting way vis-a-vis the final customer, we have to respect a number of things so as to guarantee this quality for the final customer. Otherwise, we will have a problem. In the end, these samples, in fact, we brought a dozen of them, selected 3 and then went down to 2. Today, we know that we can have at a minimum 70% recycled textiles. So if tomorrow the product is competitive, then we will be able to satisfy a number of French and even international customers. So the next steps, we have little time left. In fact, if we look at 2021, we have 2 months left. Today, we have in fact elaborated the material passports. We have to validate whether this set of materials will indeed fit the established fiche. So there will be several of these. And from that, we will then have to finalize our approach. We've done the writing. We have done a number of consultations. We've looked at a number of operators. And now we're going to have to see with a number of integrators how we can make ourselves more competitive. It's clear we can't go on a trip all around France trying to find the right people. So for these industrial players, we have to work with, in fact, dismantlers, preparers, the sorters, and then you have the transformers, and then you will have to be able to cut the materials in such a way that the product be assembled in the cars. So it's clear that this business model, this economic scheme will have to be profitable for all the players so as to be able to locate this activity here. Thank you. Are there questions? We'll take them afterwards, after you finished. Good afternoon. My name is Benoit Jeanneau, and I work, in fact, with Nimrod. I'm in charge of industrial and commercial activities. My presence here concerns the recycled thread and composites. I'm really involved in composites more than thread. This has enabled me to bring together certain expertise and work towards the reuse of household textiles that are made of cotton. So for me, cotton is first of all a plant with that cotton bud that you have to work. And then, in fact, you have to have the thread that is very solid. So there's something that can be done here with composites. In composites, we have a tendency to use not really a long fiber, but a continuous fiber. And to have these continuous fibers, it's to be able to have the necessary mechanical strength. So you have the fiber, which gives you the mechanical strength, and the resin, which is going to give you the shape. Now, for that, we decided at the time to work with eco textiles and then with Refashion. So we thought, okay, let's see how we can find the thread. What process can we look at? You know, and here we mentioned the 4 processes that could be used. And I think that our friend here, now what is pultrusion? Pultrusion is to pass threads which have been dipped in resin through a die, and that will give you the shape. And this is a hexagonal profile. This allows you to have this type of part. This is good for sports and leisure, but also in the housing net sector. So here you have a hexagonal profile, and in fact, you can have all types of profiles, full ones and hollow ones as well. Then you have the filament winding. Well, filament winding is still a profile, but here, in fact, you're going to wind the filament, which has already been dipped in resin. This is, for example, for a windsurfer where you have a mast, and this is what it looks is made of. So here we can play on the orientation of the product to obtain certain mechanical values. Now, you can also have textiles which are impregnated, and you have different approaches. You can also have an infusion, have the infusion approach. Now, for this work, we are a team of 25, so you can imagine we don't have enough people. You know, we're very focused on composites. So we have worked on the basis of work groups. Here you see the main companies with whom we have worked. To have a work group, when you talk about threads to go towards textiles, winding, pultrusion, etc. Well, you can see that the work group is going to divide up and create other work groups. So we started with work groups with industrialists, you know, machine industrialists to create jeans, a thread for a jean, work with people who have certain expertise to produce threads, then surface treatment, etc. Now, this diagram called for more time and money so as to have what's called a direct jean. Then we saw that you had different types in the market. You have some threads which are 100% cotton, others which have polyester support, etc. So we decided that, in fact, we would have a good base for our work here with this thread. This thread, which you see here, is 50% cotton, 50% polyester, quite fine, and maybe too fine. Because it's cotton, it's a discontinuous thread fiber, which means not a lot of mechanical strength. Here we linked it up with another thread. Here you see with the filaments and other tricks of the trade, we now have a thread which is consistent. So that's for the classic market for threads without glass or carbon fibers. You know that glass and carbon fibers are made up of very thin filaments. You know, the carbon fiber is going to go from 1,000 to 50,000 filaments, depending on the grade of the filament. So in fact, you have a bundle of threads, which are going to be used, for example, for pultrusion or for the production of textiles, satins, etc. And here again, you're going to use them in infusion or other means. Serge. And with this, you're able to obtain something. This is not as nice looking as in the picture, but you have fewer filaments, you know. You're able to have something which will hold up and which has certain mechanical strengths. Now, if we look at the mechanical values here, without doing the tests, we have produced and this piece of material, which is impregnated with 3 layers to obtain this. And from that, by extracting samples, we can determine the mechanical values, for example, tensile strength, impact resistance, because in composites, impact resistance is important. You have some threads which are very good, others are not. And we also can determine whether they can be machined or not. You know that when you make a composite, you have to cut it on the periphery. You need to pierce holes in it so as to be able to place mechanical parts, etc. You know that the reference in machining is carbon. You know, it leaves particles, and when you have electric motors, it's a real catastrophe. So we wanted to verify all of this. Here we have no problems in terms of machining the material. Once you have the thread, and we came to realize that it has interesting mechanical values, we were able to do the tests. And I'm going to show that here. Let's show you this here. We were able to make a few parts. So we opted for these processes rather, because these processes offer a product where you don't need to have a high mechanical value here, because today most of the things that used are carbon. So pultrusion and filament winding are 2 techniques that are easy to implement and give acceptable results if you look on a boat, for example. Having said this, there will be solutions and developments on the subject. Now, manual impregnation, in fact, we always start with the same thing. We have the looms, which have enabled us to work. And there's a bit of a lack of knowledge with regards to composites and the textile schools. They have produced what I would call a new fabric for composites. Having said this, this enabled us to carry out the tests. We saw that the thread, when it is woven, is not going to be worn in the loom. So this is interesting because if we're too heavy, we're too expensive, but it's easy to impregnate. If we lighten the fabric, today we're at 600 grams per square meters, and we have fewer threads. We can weave it less densely. So it's moving in the right direction. And normally we should do tests again to validate this scheme. Now, with these 3 or 4 applications, we have been able to have not just demonstrators, but mechanical values. We have information on feasibility, the time necessary for implementing this. And this way, we already have ideas on what we could do with this, because it's clear to develop a thread and say, okay, we have this for jeans, that's great. If you're going to simply produce a notebook with the test results and put it on the shelf, it's not interesting. No, I want projects to have meaning and to be able to bring other people on board. So today we are working with the spinner, and the idea is to propose that he get into contact with national or European distributors. Very often they're the same ones. And so they can present the thread. The distributor obviously knows his markets, and perhaps they can go around Europe to propose these products. The markets that we are targeting, obviously we've looked at the sports and leisure sector. You know, it's something that has developed over the last 30 years. It's something that is easier to develop. We know that many different activities are being developed, highly diverse, water sports, nautics sports, bicycle, etc. And you know, you have a lot of carbon parts, and you can produce all of the frames and structures for tents, which can, you know, lock into each other. So it could be very useful. It could be interesting to develop. You know, 5-10 years ago, to speak of recycling would be a very interesting cocktail discussion, but today it's a real discussion with a coherent business scheme. As far as the visibility of all of this is concerned, there are 3 events in our agenda. You have the composite meeting in November, which is something which is very targeted B2B in the field of composites. And I think that it'd be interesting to see whether the spinner can join us here. There's the boat show in Paris in December. That's interesting because in just 1 week, you're able to go on a tour of France of all potential users. And then you have, in fact, the JEC, which is a purely French trade show. It is the only worldwide composite show. It takes place in Paris in March, April. It concerns the aeronautics sector, sports and leisure activities, etc. This is a 3-day event. It allows you to also meet with all of the distributors, all of the transformers as well. So thank you for your attention. Do we have time for a few questions? I know there's a lot of questions on the chat, but what about in the room? If we could have a microphone for the lady. I have a question with regards to products for transportation applications. There have been significant events with regards to transportation with the anti-fire standards, for example. Today, as far as heat resistance is concerned, we have really referred to the auto manufacturers in terms of heat resistance and inflammability issues. We have the results. We know how the product performs in terms of heat resistance. But you should always remember that this is polyester. So you know that we are ranked E because of the benzenes, okay? So we are type E in terms of the benzene test. But we are capable of treating the product to improve performance. So it's a question of selecting the products. Our products are going to be more respectful of the environment. Any other questions in the audience? Yes? Well, we saw, yes, we saw that you could recover all types of materials, including certain plastic components. Now, in that base, how do you ensure that you have no metal like needles, magnets, etc.? Well, the consultation that we will launch will clearly indicate the absence of metallic materials. We will be installing, as far as the preparer and installer are concerned, if they are selected, they will have to have detectors, either for magnetic detectors or other more modern processes to ensure that they eliminate all metal particles. The installations exist, but in the end, it will be up to the sorting operator to exclude the metallic elements. And the other thing I would like to avoid is for the preparer to implement a means in place. He will systematically do so as to avoid the problems linked to the presence of metallic elements. Yes? Do you have any idea, for both of you, do you have any idea of the tonnage that would be economically recycled? Should I start by answering? Okay, today we have carried out a simulation on the vehicle projects entered by the French car manufacturers between 2022 and 2026. If we are competitive on the subject, that is to say, in terms of the price per square meter of the product that will be assembled on the vehicle, overall, we would have somewhere around between 1,000 and 2,000 tons of material in meters. You know, this is going to go into the door panels, under the bonnet, under the bulkhead, the boot, etc., and the floor. So it depends on the vehicle, of course, but if we look at the car manufacturer located in Alsace, well, today, given the very high production volume, we would probably be around 1,800 to 2,000 tons of material to be supplied. So, you know, all of the this in fact would call into play the industrial scheme I've described. And this is something that would have to be done not in 3 years' time, but very rapidly. So the next steps would be to structure this approach, to launch the consultations, get the requests from the players, do the audits, verifications, etc. Maybe we can give this gentleman a chance to answer.
Concerning the composite material, this thread that still does not have a name hasn't found its place yet. So it's difficult to say that there are so many tons or meters. Now we're structuring an offer to present it to the market players, in fact, the users, and it's important to have the 3 events I mentioned. And in 6 months, maybe we can answer your question. I think there's a big pile of jeans that are waiting to be processed. So in 6 months, we can maybe answer your question more precisely. Okay, one question on the chat, a question for you too. Materials that cannot be used either for automobile transportation or in your sector. Well, we started with jeans, cotton. So we have not done any surface treatment to deal with resin. Now, materials that are banned for composite, it would be materials not compatible with resins. For example, a fiber that you call 100% polyester is not compatible with epoxy because there's no adhesion, no bonding between the materials. So concerning the non-woven, I would say there are 3 products, well, 2 substances and 1 process. The two substances are iron material, and another one is polyurethane, completely banned, because we have committed ourselves to produce a recyclable product. And the third point is this idea of a clean element, unspoiled, because the car manufacturers asked us to comply with the microbial population in the cars. So we have to make sure that our products are fit for their industry. Yes, but we have to stop here with question, or unless it's a very short question. Very short then, huh? Good afternoon. For Mr. Gallon, maybe. In your business model, we know the competition in the automobile sector. Did you consider a value, whether positive, negative, or null, for the raw material? Like the textile you're going to reuse. Today, nothing is established, but yes, we're thinking of having a certain value. Yes, yes. Okay, thank you very much. Thank you to both of you. All the questions we cannot cover here, we will cover them after the event. The last key project for this afternoon, well, we'll call here Julie Jouvencel to tell us more about this last project. Welcome, Julie. So, good afternoon. Thank you to Refashion for inviting me. Let me introduce the topic. So, an introduction to the Innovation Challenge. This year, we are going to have the 12th edition. We organized 11 editions until now. This means 55 projects that have been supported and 5 million euros invested in these projects. And here you have the details concerning the 55 projects. 4 new projects started after the 2020 edition and 15 that are still underway. Among those that have been finalized, you see 15 that led to validated industrial pilots. 14 gave very good results, but no industrial application yet, and seven projects that did not lead to any clear results, just research and development. Now, for 2021, well, last year, we had already, in fact, changed slightly the criteria to get projects closer to a pre-industrial stage. And this year, we decided to change the format. And why? Well, this is to open up to the whole ecosystem. We wanted to have synergies within the ecosystem, but also with the local level. So here we bring in the traditional players of the ecosystem, but also the local authorities. And we wanted to, in fact, look at anything that could exist around the world. So see what exists at that level and maybe apply it locally. So the objective of this innovation challenge is really to welcome everyone, local initiatives, local authorities, the whole sector, implement durable solutions at the local level with the regions or the local level, and of course, we want to have something also that will have an impact on our sector over a longer period, not just a one-shot project. Good afternoon. SoScience is a social company existing since 2014, and we, in fact, use open innovation. We create gates between science and society, between sustainable objectives and the research and development teams. So today we have different networks around the world. We have academic research, industrial research, and we also look at social entrepreneurs to involve them in our programs. We're not just looking for tech startups, but anyone. It can be local authorities, associations. All the know-how is important, and we offer sort of a collaborative platform. We're open, in fact, to the European Commission. We have contributed to RRI, so you have design thinking, but the criteria is also impact, research and development. So research and development, research and innovation, and we are going to integrate their sustainable objectives. So how can together we come up with new solutions that are in line with the climate challenge, rare resources, and today we see that there's a real need to cooperate. And we've been working with different players for years, but today people want to work together. So it's time to speed this up. All the societies are, making commitments over 10, 20 years, but we have to go further. We have to test new things. And when you have a project that gives you no result, it's already an experience, it's already a learning. So today, there are many, many ecosystems that exist. There are many solutions around the world that exist. In a southern country, they come up with frugal innovations. Depending on the region, they can have innovations that we're not familiar with. And we want to bring together all these ecosystems. So we are a bridge between open innovation and impact. We also see that there's a real need for researchers to understand the impact, how we measure it, how we assess it. Now we're just at the beginning of all this, but there's no real measuring that is common to all the players. So we work also on this. And how do you think about research and innovation? How do you think about innovation to make sure it's already geared towards sustainable development? We do this thanks to collaborative work. We bring together all the players of ecosystems. They can work on technologies. It's an opportunity to get different points of view, enrich our thinking, and this will increase our creativity, and it feeds research and development. And there's also a need for facilitating things. Players have difficulties in obtaining in-house resources. People have their operational work. Also, teams are not always used to this open way of working together. So already, the work between a large group and a small startup is difficult. Well, multiplayer collaboration is something that can help. You need a methodology, you need tools, and this is what we offer today. There's a methodology that was recognized by the United Nations in June, and this is what we put at the disposal of Refashion. So why is this innovation different from traditional innovation? Well, innovation has been geared towards digital transformation. So that's great. But in the sector, we have the same innovation mapping. We have the limit of this innovation. is either you have a large group and a startup, or a large group and a research institution, and there's no real collaboration. It's more transactional, based on transactions. So we're missing collaborative intelligence. It doesn't transform the organization. It doesn't transform the way people work in research and development or in the industry. Today, people have the culture of hiding things, you know, and people are not used to exchanging in an open way and, you know, in a collaborative way rather than in a competitive way. And in fact, it's better to share things that are useful to everyone rather than investing millions and working in your little corner, and then you see that the overall benefit is not really there. So responsible innovation is in a way collaborative, and we think it's the future, and it focuses on environmental issues. For example, we worked with Perrier in the area of positive packaging. Perrier told us, we've been trying to work with a startup company for 3 years and they don't want to work with us because, you know, many researchers say, well, I don't want to work with this or that company. But in fact, we align the society's needs with the industrial needs, and we think that the company can align its assets, technology to an environmental or society issue. In this way, we convince people to work together, because what is important in the program is collaboration. People, in fact, focus on an objective, and the way to work is working together. This way of working attracts a new ecosystem. Now, the Innovation Challenge for 2021. Well, we call it the Future of. It's an 11-month program, and it is to set a frame for the actual issue. So the whole program was designed to encourage engagement. So the people don't come because they will get an award or because it's good for their communication. No, people come to collaborate and on one given project. The program is designed to be geared towards a project mode. Now, you know, the difficulty with these open innovation programs is that people don't work at the same pace, they don't have the same words, the same objectives, the same vision. It's difficult to align different players who do not have the same working process. But here we take time to align everyone. So the first step is to define the scope of the problem. So we do a design thinking session. We bring in experts. We have an expert committee organized with Refashion, and we define the question that the applicants need to try and answer. So we have to see exactly what the problem is. And we don't want to have 3,000 people who answer with, you know, just about anything on recycling. Fine, but we're going to try to solve a specific problem. So the work we do upstream now enables us to do the sourcing and find the right people. We'll exclude people who are working on very relevant things, but that do not meet our objective. So a 2-month sourcing will identify around the world players. We want different players, startups, social organizations, industrialists, local authorities, NGOs, and researchers, of course, because the topics are highly technical. It's not innovation in the area of services or model. No, it's to see how research and development and technology today can provide responsible solutions. So there will be 2 selection phases. We want diverse profiles, but we want the know-how to be relevant to our issue. And we're going to select something like 50 experts who will meet for 2 days using a digital format, because many people are outside France, and we'll organize an exchange. And often people are happy to exchange with other people they're not used to working with, to exchanging with. And the idea of these meetings is to create a consortium. The form, the shape, the size can vary. Sometimes we have projects that are bilateral. We have a startup that worked with the Perrier research and development people. We have a African Asian startup consortium also. There can be upstream research. There can be research more geared towards application. So we're going to select projects. Normally we have 15 collaboration intentions. So the exchanges are rich. People want to cooperate, want to work together with researchers, universities, startups, industrialists who are looking for new solutions. And we will select 3. This will start in January next year, February. So there we select the projects and we will follow 3. Now, there will be a 6-month monitoring to offer support. And during that period, we want to make these projects autonomous. You know, if the consortium is set up, we want people to get to know each other and we want them to be able to evolve on their own. Because, you know, once we identify the people, very often, once they have finished one project, everything stops. But no, we want the people to learn how to work together and then go on working after that. So we want to make sure that the way they work, their objectives are aligned. And by doing that, we, in fact, bring in a 5th category of players, boosters, like clusters, investors. And the roadmap for the 6-month can be how to answer a call for project to collect money, how to develop a demonstrator. So the deliverable after 6 months can vary, but it strengthens the collaboration and makes it possible to experiment solutions that can meet the problem. And this is the actual topic or problem. So following the first day with the committee, we come to the following problem: how to produce high-performing material from the environmental point of view, coming from clothing or used shoes that are non-reusable and that meet market needs in terms of functional aspects or economic aspects. So the clothing, the shoes you cannot reuse, how to use that to come up with a high-performing material from the environmental point of view. Yes, now we have to decide, you know, do we want to open up the topic or do we want to have a narrow topic? Well, we've come up with this problem. So there's the market need that has been clearly identified. And I'm looking forward to all the exchanges and work that will be done on this issue. Now, at 4 p.m., you will have an exchange concerning the innovation challenge. Johan will give you more information about the program. We are, in fact, calling for candidates as of today. There's probably a buzz on the social network. You will have 2 versions. You will have an English version and a French version. So a workshop now with Johan. If you have any specific questions, you can put them to him or other on the website, Refashion So Science. Thank you, Julie. Thank you very much. Well, we're coming to the end of the day. Thank you, Cécile. Thank you to all speakers, and thank you to all listeners. Now, all the questions we have not answered here today, either on the chat or in the room, we will answer them in the coming days. All the presentations will be made available on the platform iwi, and what we can say is that we need all the words you have suggested to us, starting with RE, and what will be your RE term? Rebound, rebound, and mine is going to be recycle. And this is not a surprise, a beautiful cloud of words here. And before we conclude, and before we ask Alain to conclude the day, let me say that for those of you who are here, we will see you again in front of a coffee in the room next door. So thank you all for your participation. And now, Alain, is Alain anywhere for the conclusion? So how do you feel after this day? Well, I see a lot of people in the room and still a lot of people online. So let me really thank you all for the interest you have shown, and thank you for your motivation, because we really feel that motivation in the questions you raise and in the commitments that some of you have already made. Now, of course, I would like to warmly thank all our speakers who have shared their experience with us, their projects, their convictions, their beliefs. Now, in fact, at some points, I thought, wow, what an interesting topic this is. Of course, there's always the question, how much is this going to cost? But we'll see that later. So very promising topics. I would like to thank the technical team, a very professional technical team, that we've seen a perfect coordination of the work today. So we will thank people who are present here and those who are online. And it is thanks to today's technology that we are able to progress. And of course, as Maud has said, many questions were raised, and all those that have not found an answer will get an answer very soon. I would also like to sincerely thank the Refashion team, a team that has grown and that is growing all the time. And at the same time, I hope that we can also participate in the acceleration of the circular economy. So growing in the number of people, growing in terms of efficiency, and also in the number of services we offer to our stakeholders. And I would like to thank Didier Soufflet. Unfortunately, he could not stay with us until this evening, but say thank you on his behalf. Didier, our president at the Board of Associates, and I would also like to thank the brands, in fact, that support us and put their trust in us. And I hope I have not forgotten anyone. Now, I seem to understand that there was something around the RE words. And I was wondering what sort of RE word I can mention that it was not suggested until now. Well, there's one that was, in fact, often mentioned without really knowing it was an RE word, and that is refashion, because I think that we are altogether refashion and that we are developing this spirit of renewing the way we do things. And see, since I am the last speaker today, I have another word, and that is responsibility. In other words, starting with RE, because if we are here today, it's because there's a big principle guiding us, and that is responsibility of the producer. And when we think about these terms, responsibility, to be responsible is to give a response, and offering a response, and a good response is when you ask the right question. And I hope that today and this morning, this afternoon, we were able to put the right questions, and that collectively we have been able to give you the right responses. And I will see you all, I hope, next year. Thank you very much.